Hello everyone, this is Cian Murphy from NFP Synergy. Today I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the latest results from our general public coronavirus polling to do with charities and the pandemic. If you're not familiar with this research, it's a series of polls. We're on to our fourth wave now, where we've surveyed a sample of the general public in Great Britain and asked them about charities, the pandemic, how it's affected their giving, how they expect it to affect their giving in the future. I'm going to be presenting to you today from a version of our dashboard. This is available on our website. I'll link to it in the comments or description of this video below as well if you want to get to grips with it. A nice way for you to be able to play around with the data, explore what's going on there yourself. And in particular, you can filter it and look at different audiences that you might be interested in yourself in particular. So what have we seen as some of the trends in the latest wave? Well, the first thing to note, if we look at issues of concern, the current outbreak of coronavirus is still dominating people's concerns. It's the issue that people are most concerned about compared to anything else, 67% of people. But if we look at the trend, actually it has gone down quite a bit. So 67% of people now saying that the current outbreak of coronavirus is among the top issues that they're most concerned about. That's down from 78% at the end of April and 81% at the start of April. On the other hand, we're seeing some other issues coming back into the public discussion that maybe weren't there to begin with. In particular, things like immigration, austerity, economic inequality, all of these maybe business as usual type of issues that people haven't been concerned about because of the pandemic are coming a bit to the fore now. And you can see it here even with something like terrorism coming up as a bit more important, while the outbreak of coronavirus and quality of NHS services have gone down as issues that people are most concerned about at the moment. So that some of that sense of urgency appears to be being lost, and that is borne out in some of the other results as well. So if we look here at attitudes to the outbreak, and particularly it'll be interesting to look at the trend here. If we look in the pink line here, I intend to stay in my local area for the next few months. 89, 92% of people in April saying that they intend to stay in their local area for the next few months. That's declined to 74% by June. If we look at the proportion of people who say that they're personally very anxious about the outbreak, 65% at the start of April, down to 56% by June. On the other hand, if we look at the proportion of people who say they're confident they'll stay well throughout the outbreak, that's gone up from 38% in April to 48% in June. So a big turnaround, people may be a little bit less concerned about the virus and how it's going to impact them personally, maybe a little bit more complacent and a bit less concerned than they were in March or April as this has taken its course. If you look here at, I don't think my day-to-day life should be affected by the outbreak, that's gone up from 16% to 22%. On the other hand, people are not pleased with how the government is handling the outbreak. So if we look here, about 50% of people in April said that they were pleased with how the government is handling the outbreak. That's gone down to 36%. Worth mentioning, of course, that between the wave in late April and the wave in June, we had, of course, the Dominic Cummings incident, which we know from other sources really shook people's confidence in government and its response to the pandemic. So some big changes there. Some big changes as well to the structure of how people are trusting different sources, and one that would be really concerning for the official narrative, if you like, of coronavirus. So again, if we look at the trend, this is a question where we ask people, to what extent would you trust information from each of the following sources about the coronavirus outbreak? If we look at NHS officials, that's gone down from 88% to 84%. If we look at government statements, that's gone from 69% to 55%. If we look at TV news, that's gone down. If we look at newspapers, that's gone down. And what are the things that have gone up? Well, social media and family and friends. So there's been this move from formal official channels or institutional channels like the media towards less formal, more family, friends, social media, people being trusted more to tell the truth about coronavirus. And that, of course, is concerning as this pandemic progresses, that people are losing faith in the national public institutions to be telling the truth about it. So how do charities fit into this? Actually, maybe because they're somewhere in between these official institutions and the less formal ones, they seem to not have changed hugely. So 52% of people say they trust charities, basically the same as it was at the end of March, 53%. Really very little change, bar a couple of percentage points here and there for charities. Worth saying that they are still behind a number of different sources, including family and friends and government statements when it comes to trust. So maybe that's something of a concern if you're a charity trying to get your message out there about the pandemic. Thinking then specifically about charities and charitable causes, well, one of the effects I think that we've seen is that as people have become less concerned about the pandemic and the coronavirus, there's been something of a return to business as usual. And that's been played out here if we look at the trend in the kinds of charities that people are willing to support. So this is a question: would you consider supporting a charity working in any of the following sectors over the next 3 months? And we've seen this huge uplift in the proportion of people who'd like to support a cancer charity. So from 30% at the end of April to 38% towards the end of June. And that, maybe a return. Cancer has always been the favourite cause of the public in Britain as long as we've been tracking it. But mental health as well, seeing a bit of an uplift. So 30% of people saying they would consider supporting a mental health charity, putting it in second place, showing that it's an issue that, well, on the one hand is very topical at any rate and has been a subject of great discussion over the last number of years in Britain, but also one that has been brought to the fore by the effects of lockdown in particular, and isolation and loneliness and so on individuals over the course of the pandemic, and people are really still willing to support an organisation working in this field at the moment. Thinking about specific brands, that also plays out with mental health being such a huge topic at the moment. 6% of people now saying that they would associate Mind with the current outbreak of coronavirus, and that actually is the highest of any charity. This is an open-ended question where we ask people to write in whatever the first charities that come to mind working on the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak are. Of course, worth saying that most people are unable to think of any organisation, 54% of people, down from the mid-60s when we first asked this question. But so people still not entirely sure who the charities are out there that are responding to the coronavirus. If we look at the trend, actually there's been shifts in every wave that we've tracked this. So Mind has slowly and steadily grown from 2% of people thinking it's one of the first charities that comes to mind in the end of March up to 6% by the end of June. By contrast, the British Red Cross has dipped from a peak of 12% at the start of April down to 6% in June. So some real shifts going on over time in the kinds of charities that people are thinking about. Likewise, in our last wave at the end of April, we said that a lot of space that would previously maybe have been going to charities fundraising seemed to have been taken up by the NHS Charities Together. That actually has receded a little bit as well. So 7% of people mentioned this group of organisations or charities in April, down to 5% in June, and maybe reflecting again something of that return to business as usual. The people are not so much thinking of the NHS, but maybe more traditional charities as well. When we think about the ways that people are getting involved with charities and how they've done something to help other people, I suppose, over the course of the pandemic, we've seen some real changes in this as well. And the main shift we've seen is a move where at the start people were doing very informal types of volunteering, helping out in their community. So in the first wave in March, 17% of people said that they'd helped out in their community, going to the shops for an at-risk neighbour. And that hasn't really grown over the course of lockdown and the pandemic and so on. It's 21% now, so not very much of a change. So mostly people did that in the early stages. On the other hand, what has grown over time is donating to a charity responding to the outbreak. So 8% of people in our first wave, up to 23% in our latest wave. So over time, people's actions have moved from helping out in their community, informal volunteering, towards actually donating money to a specific cause. And I suppose if you're a charity, that is good news that is what people are turning towards. On the other hand, if you look at what they would consider doing in the future, a lot of that has declined. So 20% of people now say that they wouldn't consider doing any of these things, helping out in their community, donating to a charity, volunteering, fundraising, so on. Some of that will be because they've actually done it rather than considering doing it, but still maybe not the most encouraging sign in the world that there's disproportionate people who are not willing to do anything. Thinking about how people think the pandemic is going to affect their giving behaviour then, one of the really encouraging things we've seen over the course of this is that most people expect and hope that charities will continue fundraising. So If you look here, 2/3 of people saying that they think charities should continue to fundraise for the general public during the outbreak. That's actually gone up over time. So 57% in March, 67% in June. Maybe as people are realizing that this is now in there for the long haul, charities do need to keep asking for money. They do need money to keep going. And that is not something that the public are going to be surprised by or find shocking or insensitive or anything like that. Certainly not for most people. If we look at support for charities versus businesses by the government, some really interesting results. So 53% of people think the government is doing enough to support businesses at this time. If we scroll down here in dark blue, 34% of people think that the government is doing enough to support charities at this time. So there is certainly a case to be made there that the public are reasonably pleased with how government is responding to the needs of business, but are not convinced at all that government is doing enough to support charities. And that has actually declined since our last wave, when 41% of people were pleased with government support for charities. In terms of actual giving behaviour, 23% of people expect to decrease how much they give to charity over the next few months. 18% expect to increase how much they give to charity. So not a huge difference there, actually. And this has been reasonably consistent since since we first started tracking this as well. There is still a significant audience out there who recognize that the need is still there, and therefore they should be supporting, and they're willing to support charities in the work that they're doing. So some encouraging signs there as well, along with the fact that people are expecting you to continue fundraising, and I suppose we'll hope that you continue to do so. Thinking about what the public thinks the charities should be doing, unfortunately here we see something of the same trend of urgency declining, I suppose. So if we see here people thinking that charities should be providing day-to-day support for at-risk people, that has gone down from 64% to 53% over the course of our tracking. If we look at providing volunteers to help out in hospitals, that's declined quite significantly as well. Actually, the only area really that's gone up, apart from not sure, don't know, or none of the above, is campaigning on behalf of their vulnerable beneficiaries. So maybe what we can interpret this as is the public seeing less immediate urgency at the moment, but can recognise the need for charities to speak up and be trusted voices on behalf of their beneficiaries, and to say how this pandemic is affecting the groups that they represent. Finally then, the last area that we ask in this polling is to what extent people are concerned about the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on different groups. Unfortunately, what we're seeing with this is something similar to the general trend in urgency about the pandemic. So if we look at the proportion of people who are concerned, that's extremely concerned or very concerned about older people, that has gone down from 82% in March to 71% in June. People with underlying health conditions, that's gone from 81% to 69%. People living with heart disease has gone from 73% to 62%. Across the board, people are less concerned about the outcome of the pandemic and the impact of the disease on huge numbers of at-risk groups. And that matches as well the fact that people are a bit less concerned about the potential impact of the virus on their own health, as we saw on the first slide, with fewer people, or an increasing number of people, thinking that they're going to stay well throughout the course of the pandemic. The one sort of spot of good news here is that people are a little bit more concerned than they were at the end of April about the effect of the outbreak on people living with diabetes. So these are the areas that we've covered. I'd encourage you to go and play around with the data. You can look at the dashboard and explore it yourself. If you have any questions at all, please do get in touch. We'd love to talk to you about this. We're not currently planning any future waves of the research, but we are open to doing so if there's a huge amount of interest out there to see this repeated again down the line. So as I say, please do get in touch, and we would love to hear from you. Thanks a lot.